Welcome to the Wisconsin Heights Drama Club presentation of The Trial of Ebenezer Scrooge. Please take this time to silence any noise-making device. There is a hearing loop available for users of assisted hearing devices such as hearing aids and cochlear implants. To use the hearing loop, switch your device to the telecoil setting and enjoy the show. If you are interested in making a donation, please see the PayPal link on the streaming link or the link in the program for more information. Thank you for being here with us, and we hope you enjoy the show.
We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin, good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good morning, Your Honor.
What's good about it?
It's snowing. It's Christmas Eve. There's joy in
It
here.
was a rhetorical question.
Oh, big trial starts today.
I am well aware of that fact.
The papers are calling it the trial of the century.
The papers should concern themselves with news and not sensationalism.
Everyone's going to be following this trial.
Everyone should find something better to do.
Why?
Because, Mr. Connolly, I don't like this trial, and I have to be forced to listen to the sickening sweet courtroom proceedings of Mr. Rothschild and Solomon. Would you please state your full name for the court? Mrs. Catherine Harrington. Mrs. Harrington, may I call you Catherine?
They're
Mark
just
me.
doing their job.
Every witness. As should you do your job. As for Mr. Rothschild and Solomon, I wish they'd do their job somewhere else. I find them sickening, sweet, doltish irritant in my courtroom.
I haven't heard who's representing Mr. Scrooge yet.
He's representing himself.
Why?
Because he's cheap.
All rise, the Honorable Stansfield R. Pearson.
Be seated. Court is now in session. Entered on this 24th day of December 1844 by Ebenezer Scrooge, a complaint of attempted murder, kidnapping, trespassing, breaking and entering, and the intentional infliction of emotional distress against Jacob Marley and the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Mr. Solomon, how do your clients plead?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Very well. Mr. Scrooge, your opening remarks?
Bah humbug.
That's it? That's your opening?
Yes, that's what I think of Mr. Marley and his hooligan friends. Bah humbug.
Mr. Scrooge, perhaps if you'd reconsider legal representation.
I am fully representable by representing myself.
Very well. Mr. Solomon, your opening remarks?
Merry Christmas!
Objection!
Mr. Scrooge, you may not legally object to Mr. Solomon's opening remarks.
Well, I find the phrase Merry Christmas
As much
objectionable.
as you find the phrase Merry Christmas objectionable, you may not legally object to it during Mr. Solomon's opening remarks. Again, I urge you to reconsider legal.
I am fully capable of representing myself.
Then it will come as no surprise to someone as knowledgeable about courtroom proceedings as yourself that it is common courtesy to refer to me as your honor.
Well, I'm fully aware of that courtesy.
Sit down, Mr. Scrooge, and not another word from you during Mr. Solomon's opening remarks. Mr. Solomon?
Thank you, Your Honor. Happy holidays! This trial is not about attempted murder. It is not about kidnapping. It is not about slander or theft or trespassing. But I do agree with Mr. Scrooge on one point. This trial is about pain and suffering. It is about the pain and suffering of a shut-up heart, the pain and suffering of a lost soul, the pain and suffering endured by Mr. Scrooge for years because he had lost the Christmas spirit. 1 year ago this very night, Mr. Scrooge's closest and only friend went to extraordinary measures to heal that pain and suffering. Jacob Marley, along with the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, came to Mr. Scrooge and challenged him. They challenged him to look beyond the darkness of his cold, shriveled soul, to look beyond his vicious and malicious ways, to look beyond his pain and suffering, and to look into the bosom and the belly of the miraculous and awe-inspiring spirit of Christmas. And do you know what happened? Do you know what happened when Mr. Scrooge took a good hard look into a life brimming with the Christmas spirit? Mr. Scrooge found his heart. Mr. Scrooge found his soul. Mr. Scrooge found his joy, his compassion, and his happiness because Mr. Scrooge found the spirit of Christmas. We all saw the change in him. How could we not? His soul had new life. His heart laughed, and we laughed with him. He was merciful. He was charitable. He was a pleasure and a joy to be near. But now, the unthinkable has happened. Mr. Scrooge's heart has grown cold again. Mr. Scrooge's soul is shut up again. Mr. Scrooge's life is merciless, malignant, and malevolent again because Mr. Scrooge has lost the Christmas spirit. Again. And as if that wasn't enough, as if a fall of man wasn't enough, as if the souring of the wondrous milk of human kindness wasn't enough, Mr. Scrooge now wants to punish those benevolent, selfless souls who brought about the miraculous change in him a year ago. My clients didn't murder Mr. Scrooge. They didn't kidnap him. They didn't harass or harm him. What they did was go to extraordinary measures to heal the pain Mr. Scrooge suffered by helping him find the Christmas spirit. And for that, my clients should not be punished. They should be embraced and loved. Thank you.
Mr. Scrooge, you may call your first witness.
No witnesses at this time.
You're kidding, right?
No.
Why, Mr. Rothschild?
I'd like to call to the stand Mr. Robert Cratchit, Your Honor.
Mr. Robert Cratchit?
Would you please state your full name for the court, please?
Robert Cratchit.
Oh, God.
Mr. Cratchit, may I call you Robert?
Bob is fine.
Bob, what is your relationship to Mr. Scrooge?
I'm a clerk at Scrooge and Marley's.
And you work for both Scrooge and Marley.
Only Mr. Scrooge.
Why not Mr. Marley?
Well, Mr. Marley is dead to begin with.
Dead.
Yes, sir.
Was he dead on the night in question?
Yes, sir.
You're positive?
Yeah, there's no doubt whatsoever about that. The register of burial was signed by the clerk, the clergyman, the undertaker, and
Yes.
Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge himself signed the register of burial?
Yes, and his name is good for anything he chooses to put his hand to.
So, on the night in question, old Marley was as dead as a doornail.
Objection.
Sustained. Mr. Rothschild, we are well aware that Mr. Marley was dead.
But, Your Honor, this must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of this trial we're about to undertake. If we were not perfectly convinced that Hamlet's father died before the show began, then there would be nothing more remarkable than his taking a stroll at night upon an easterly wind than there would be any other middle-aged gentleman rashly turning out after dark in a breezy spot just to frighten his son's weak mind.
Thank you for the literary lesson. You've made your point. Get on with it.
Bob, what kind of a man is Mr. Scrooge?
Well, he is thrifty.
Oh, Bob, what a type is it?
Who is this woman? Who is this woman? Remove her from the court. Who is this woman? Who is this woman?
Sharpest whip with no steels ever struck out genuous fire.
Let me hear another word from any of you, and I'll have the lot of you arrested for contempt. Mr. Connolly, lock the door. I'll have no more interruptions. Mr. Rothschild?
Bob, would you agree with your wife's outburst?
Objection.
Sustained. Mr. Rothschild, you shall not encourage contemptible behavior.
Bob, how long have you worked for Mr. Marley?
10 years.
In those 10 years, have you and Mr. Scrooge ever had a drink together after work?
No.
Ever had him over for dinner?
No.
Have you ever had dinner at his house?
Mr. Scrooge is solitary and self-contained and secretive as an oyster.
Objection.
Establishing character, Your Honor.
Be quick about it. Overruled.
Bob, where were you on the night in question?
I was at work.
Of all the good days of the year, on Christmas Eve you were working?
Yes, sir, I had to work the whole day.
Do you recall what the day was like?
Yes, I distinctly remember the city clock striking 3, but it was quite dark already, and candles were flaring in the neighboring offices like ruddy smears upon the wretched brown air. It was extremely foggy that day, and I remember thinking to myself that to see fog come pouring in, obscuring everything, one might have thought that nature lived hard by and was brewing on a large scale.
Quite cold that day, as I recall.
Yes, it was cold, bleak, biting weather.
But you had the warmth of your office to protect you from the elements.
Not quite.
No? You didn't have a fire blazing inside the successful offices of Scrooge and Marley?
No, sir. External heat and cold have very little influence on Mr. Scrooge. It seems that no warmth warms him, nor wimpy winds chills him.
Surely you had some sort of fire burning.
A really small one.
How small?
1 coal.
1 coal?
Yes, sir.
That hardly constitutes a fire.
Mr. Scrooge's order.
Did you ask if you could put more coal on the fire?
Oh, I did.
And he said?
He said if I took 1 more coal from the coal box, my services would no longer be needed.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness?
Mr. Cratchit, did you say that you were working on Christmas Day?
No, sir. I said I worked on Christmas Eve.
Oh, I thought you said you were working on Christmas Day.
No, you gave me Christmas Day off, remember?
Ah, yes. I remember now. No more questions.
You may step down. Mr. Solomon?
I'd like to call to the stand Mrs. Frederica Fitzpatrick.
Mrs. Frederica Fitzpatrick?
Would you please state your full name for the court?
Frederica Samantha Fitzpatrick.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick, may I call you Frederica?
Oh, for the love.
Fred is fine.
Thank you. Fred, what is your relationship to Mr. Scrooge?
Mr. Scrooge is my uncle.
By birth or by marriage?
By birth. My mother and he were brother and sister.
Were? Is your mother deceased?
Yes.
I'm sorry. On the night in question, did you see your uncle?
I did. I visited him at his office.
And what kind of mood was your uncle in when you saw him?
His usual mood. Grumpy, crotchety, disagreeable.
Did your visit cheer him up?
No, if anything, it made him more disagreeable.
Did you come bearing bad news?
I came to wish him a Merry Christmas and invite him to Christmas dinner.
And this made him more disagreeable.
My uncle has taken a keen dislike to Christmas.
Any reason why?
He's never said.
Did he accept your invitation to dinner?
As usual, he declined.
As usual.
Every Christmas I visit him and invite him to dinner, and every year he says no.
Because of his dislike for Christmas?
Or because of his dislike for me.
Have you done anything to warrant this behavior?
We've never had a quarrel that I can recall.
And yet, you return every Christmas to invite him to dinner, even though you receive the same response every time?
I've always thought of Christmas as a good time, a kind, charitable time. The only time I know of in the long calendar year when men and women seem by one consent to open their hearts and think of each other as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave, rather than just creatures bound on other journeys. Christmas has done me good, and it will do me good if I say God bless it.
Bravo!
Mr. Connolly, another word and you will keep your Christmas by losing your situation.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness?
You're quite a powerful speaker, madame. I wonder why you don't go into Parliament.
Objection.
Badgering the witness.
It was
Sustained.
a compliment.
I didn't like your tone.
Miss Fitzpatrick, in the past 10 years, how many times have you come to visit me?
That's easy. 10.
10 times? You're sure?
Yes.
You're positive?
Yes, every Christmas Eve.
Never on New Year's Eve,
No.
Boxing Day,
No.
Guy Fawkes Day,
No.
St. George's Day,
No.
May Day, Crips Day in autumn?
No.
Surely on my birthday.
I'm afraid I don't even know when it is.
I suppose you're right. 10 times, 10 visits, 10 years. In your diatribe about Christmas.
Objection.
Sustained, Mr. Scrooge.
In your speech about Christmas, you said that Christmas time is the only time where you believe that men and women can open their hearts freely with caring and generosity.
Yes.
This spirit is what you would call the Christmas spirit?
Yes.
Caring and generosity?
Yes.
The spirit that you believe I do not possess?
Yes,
Do you believe you possess a spirit?
I do.
More than most people?
More than you, I'm afraid.
So let me ask you this. Where does your Christmas spirit, your spirit of caring and generosity, go for the rest of the 364 days a year?
It doesn't go anywhere. It's always inside me.
I see. So why don't you visit me any other time of the year?
Well, I pay the visits in homage to the Christmas spirit.
Well, yet you just said that your Christmas spirit is always inside of you.
Yes?
So why don't you visit me any other time of the year?
Well,
Precisely. No more questions.
You may step down. Mr. Rothschild, your witness.
I'd like to call to the stand Miss Sarah Wainwright, Your Honor.
Miss Sarah Wainwright.
Would you please state your full name for the court, please?
Sarah Ann Wainwright.
Shoot me.
Miss Wainwright, may I call you Sarah?
Yes, sir, you may.
Sarah, on the night in question, did you see Mr. Scrooge?
I most certainly did.
And where was that?
At his office.
What business brought you to Mr. Scrooge's office?
Well, at Christmas time, I go door to door to the various businesses in and around the London area, soliciting money for the poor and destitute.
And what charitable organization do you work for?
Oh, I don't work for an organization. I do this on my own.
Taken it upon yourself to help the poor?
Yes, I have.
What prompted you to undertake this cause?
Several Christmases ago, we were having a party at our home. Someone said it was snowing, so we all rushed to the front window to go look out. And when we did, there in the street stood a homeless family, just standing there. They looked so homeless. You know, cold, hungry, sad. They were just staring at us, and I couldn't help staring right back. We had some leftover food, so I put on my coat, my hat, my mittens, and my new mink muffler and took the food out to them. I wished them a Merry Christmas, and they were so grateful. I felt a warmth inside me, and in that moment, I realized Christmas is more than parties and presents and pretty dresses. Oh, sure, that's a big part of it, but it's more than that. So every Christmas, when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices, I trod door to door to raise funds to provide the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. I believe everyone is entitled to that on Christmas.
How many people benefit from your efforts?
Not nearly enough. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries, and hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts.
Out of everyone you solicit, approximately how many give money?
Nearly everyone. At Christmas time, abundance truly rejoices. Even your people give a little something.
What can I say? We're givers. On the night in question, how much did Mr. Scrooge give you?
Nothing.
He wished to remain anonymous.
He wished to be left alone.
Alone?
That was his wish.
Mr. Scrooge didn't give you any money.
No, he did not.
Did he give a reason why?
It was Mr. Scrooge's opinion that since he pays the taxes for the prisons and workhouses, that those who are badly off should go there.
Should they?
It is well documented that the establishments to which Mr. Scrooge was referring scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude. Frankly, many people would rather die than go to the workhouses, and when I told him that, he said,
Yes.
and I quote, "If they had rather die, then they had better do so and decrease the surplus population."
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness.
Miss Wainwright, how long have you lived in London for?
My entire life, born and raised here.
So you're then fairly familiar then with the city.
Yes, I am.
How would you describe the weather here?
Perfect.
Perfect if you're a duck. Ducks love it here. It's cold and wet.
Mr. Connolly, please refrain from sharing your opinions with the courtroom, or the ducks won't be the only things that are cold and wet.
Mr. Conley thinks it's cold and wet.
Objection.
Sustained. Mr. Scrooge, Mr. Connolly's want-witted opinions shall not be taken into account.
Fine. I think it's cold and wet, rainy and foggy. Don't you think so, Miss Wainwright?
Yes, well, I agree. We have our share of that kind of weather.
Share, more like a monopoly. what's the average temperature in February?
Objection. We're not here to discuss the annual weather report.
Mr. Scrooge, is there a point to this questioning?
I'm kidding.
Be quick about it. Overruled.
What's the average temperature in February?
I wouldn't know.
Well, you should know. You've lived here all your life.
I know generally. I don't know exact figures.
Well, generally will do. Does it ever, let's say, get below freezing in February?
Yes, sometimes.
Generally.
Generally, yes, I'd say so.
Does it ever rain?
Yes.
Does it ever sleet?
Yes.
How about snow?
Yes.
Have you ever seen it snow in October?
Yes, I have.
How about March?
Yes.
April?
A few years ago, it snowed on Easter Sunday.
Has to be fairly cold to snow in April, doesn't it?
Yes.
That's 7 months, Miss Rainwright. 7 months of cold, disgusting, miserable weather. And 5 months of, let's be honest, not so good weather. Now, the taxes that I pay every single week go help fund the poor for means of warmth and food. Now, in the long term, Mr. Wainwright, who's doing more for the poor, you or me? No more questions.
You may step down. Your witness, Mr. Rothschild?
I'd like to call a witness.
Mr. Scrooge, you may not call
Your
a
Honor, if Mr. Scrooge would like to call a witness, we shall happily yield the floor to him.
Very well.
I'd like to call to the stand Mr. Jacob Marley.
Mr. Jacob Marley? Mr. Jacob Marley!
Will you please state who you are to the court?
Who I was.
Rather particular for a shadow.
Objection.
Sustained, Mr. Scrooge.
Fine. Who were you then?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
In life? When did you die?
8 years ago. 8 years ago this very night, Christmas Eve.
Was it a very Merry Christmas for you, was it?
Objection.
Sustained, Mr. Scrooge.
Yes, I know. Mr. Marley, in the past 8 years, have we ever seen each other?
We have seen each other twice, but I have seen you many times.
Oh, and where was that?
As part of my penance, I am forced to sit invisible beside you for many and many a day.
Mr. Marley, that's known as stalking.
Objection. Overruled.
When were those 2 times? When was that?
A year ago today.
Both on the same day?
Yes.
The first time, where did we meet?
At your front door.
And do you recall where I was standing?
At your doorstep.
And where were you?
I was in your door knocker.
You and my door knocker? Rather peculiar place to meet someone. I mean, I understand meeting someone at your front doorstep, but not the door knocker. Why were you there?
To warn you of my impending visit.
You came to me in my door knocker to warn me about your impending visit. Mr. Marley, if you were there, then why didn't you just tell me then? Mr. Marley, I didn't hear your answer. Why not just tell me then?
I don't know.
Do you remember where I went next?
You went inside.
And you were left in the door knocker?
No, I had already left the door knocker.
Oh, where did you go?
I followed you inside.
Mr. Marley, I don't remember inviting you in. That's known as trespassing.
Objection.
Overruled.
Mr. Marley, did you or did you not enter my bedroom through a double-locked door, uninvited?
I came to offer you a chance in hope of escaping my fate.
Mr. Marley, did you or did you not enter my bedroom through a double-locked door?
A chance in hope of my procuring.
Answer the question!
A chance in hope of...
Mr. Marley, answer the question. Did you or did you not enter Mr. Scrooge's bedchamber through a double-locked door uninvited?
I did.
And what was this chance and hope you were offering me that night?
A visitation of 3 spirits who'd...
Visitation? No. Mr. Marley, I remember and I recall your exact words to be, you will be haunted by 3 ghosts. Ooh. Does that sound correct, Mr. Marley?
Maybe.
Mr. Marley, yes or no?
Yes.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits, not you will be visited by 3 spirits. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Mr. Marley, those are 2 distinct different words. One implies you popping in for a bit of tea, and the other one conjures frightening images of horror and eldritch beings. Mr. Marley, you broke in my house at night to threaten, terrorize, and haunt me.
It was for your own good.
If it was for my own good, then why did you wait 7 years?
My bad. As part of my penance, I am forced to sit invisible beside it.
Yet you just admitted earlier that you sat by my side many of a day. Which is it, Mr. Marley? Which is it? No more questions.
Mr. Solomon, your witness.
Mr. Marley, may I call you Jacob?
You may.
Jacob, you're fettered. Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I built it link by link, yard by yard. I made it of my own free will, and of my own free will I wear it. Is its pattern strange to you, Ebenezer? Or must I remind you of the chain that you bear yourself? It was as long, as full, and as heavy as this.
Mr. Marley.
8 Christmas Eves ago.
Order.
You have labored on it since then. 'Tis a ponderous chain!
Mr. Marley, if you cannot control yourself, I will have you held on contempt.
I apologize, Your Honor. My client is under a great deal of strain.
He's not the only one.
It's his penance. Jacob, you mentioned you're serving some sort of penance?
In life, men and the spirits within them must travel the world amongst their fellow men. And if they do not do so in life, they are condemned to do so after death.
And your spirit never went forth?
My spirit never roved beyond the narrow confines of our money-changing hole. I am doomed to wander the earth and witness what I could have shared in life and turn to happiness.
How did this happen? You obviously were a good man of business.
Business. Mankind was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence, they were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the ocean of my business.
It must be very painful.
No rest, no sleep. Many weary days lie before me.
And yet, despite your overwhelming fatigue, despite your unfathomable exhaustion, you summoned up the strength to visit your old friend, Ebenezer Scrooge.
I came to offer him a chance in hope of escaping my fate.
Why didn't you come to him earlier?
I didn't fill out the proper papers. They put me on a 7-year waiting list.
They?
The 3 spirits.
There's a 7-year wait for the 3 spirits?
It's nearly possible to get an appointment.
They're that busy?
Well, there are many Ebenezer Scrooges who walk the earth and are in need of their assistance.
Why not get 3 other spirits?
They're the only ones who do this kind of work.
No more questions, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Look to see me no more. And remember, for your own sake, remember what has happened here between us. Oh, God.
I'd like to call
Mr. Scrooge, you may
Again,
not-
Your Honor, we happily yield the floor to Mr. Scrooge.
Very well.
I'd like to call to the stand the ghost of Christmas past.
The ghost of Christmas past.
Will you please state your full name for the court?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
Were you one of the 3 spirits foretold to me by Mr. Marley?
I am
And what business brought you to my household?
your welfare.
And don't you think a night of more unbroken peace would have been more conducive to that end?
Your reclamation.
That included kidnapping me?
Objection.
Sustained.
I'm not mistaken. I was kidnapped by this apparition.
Your Honor, Mr. Scrooge was not kidnapped.
I was taken out of my house against my own will.
Your Honor, look at my client. She's as gentle as a child.
As gentle as a woman's touch, her grasp was not to be resisted.
Order! At the end of this trial, I will determine whether Mr. Scrooge did or did not go of his own volition.
Spirit, did you or did you not take me, clad only in my nightingale hat and slippers, out of my bedroom door and out of my house,
Yes.
subjecting me, a mere mortal, for the great possibility of falling to my death?
With my hands upon your heart, you are more than upheld.
I don't know what it's called in your little netherworld, Spirit, but that's known as kidnapping and endangerment. No more questions.
Mr. Rothschild?
Ghost of Christmas Past. May I call you Past?
Oh, for the love.
You may.
Past. You said the reason you visited Mr. Scrooge was his reclamation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was Mr. Scrooge in need of a reclamation?
Yes.
Did you kidnap Mr. Scrooge?
Heavens, no.
Objection!
Overruled.
But
Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge says you did.
Mr. Scrooge is mistaken.
objection!
Overruled.
She's lying.
Order!
I am not mistaken. I was kidnapped by this apparition.
Mr. Scrooge, order!
Let's say you did kidnap Mr. Scrooge.
But I didn't.
I know.
Then why did you say I did?
For the sake of argument.
I'd rather not argue.
I'm just trying to make a point.
Oh. Right, go on.
Let's say you came into Mr. Scrooge's room and kidnapped him. What'd you tie him up with? Rope?
No.
Sheets?
No.
Chains like Mr. Marley's?
No. I did not tie up Mr. Scrooge.
Did you hold his arms and legs so he couldn't move?
No.
Throw him in a sack?
No.
Knock him unconscious?
No.
I'm confused.
That's not surprising.
Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge alleges that you kidnapped him. How did you force him to stay with you?
I did not force Mr. Scrooge. I simply touched his heart.
Something I'm sure Mr. Scrooge hasn't felt in years.
Objection!
Sustained.
So you've gotten Mr. Scrooge out of his room. What did you ask for ransom? Money?
No.
Better working conditions?
No.
The release of trapped spirits?
No. I sought nothing from him.
Again, I'm confused.
Because you're an idiot!
Mr. Scrooge, you are trying my already limited patience. Another outburst and I will have you thrown in jail until the only way to remove you from your cell will be to sweep out your ashes.
So, if you didn't immobilize Mr. Scrooge, and you didn't ask for any sort of ransom, what prevented him from escaping?
Nothing.
Objection!
Overruled.
That ghost is perjurizing herself!
Perhaps you mean perjuring.
She's a polterous poltergeist!
Mr. Scrooge.
She's lying!
I know what the word means, Mr. Scrooge. You were given an opportunity to question the witness. It is now Mr. Rothschild's turn. Mr. Rothschild?
Past, you said Mr. Scrooge was free to leave.
Yes.
At any time.
Yes. He only needed to extinguish me with this hat, and he would be back in his bedchamber.
That's a powerful hat.
I'm a powerful ghost.
Ah, not as gentle as she seems, huh?
Mr. Scrooge.
How does that hat work?
It extinguishes my light,
Your light?
the light of one's past.
And that's where you took Mr. Scrooge, is it not? To revisit his past?
Too often we forget our pasts and who we truly are.
Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A, Mr. Scrooge's past. First slide, please. Past, could you tell us what we're looking at here?
Oh, Mr. Scrooge was a boy here. He was bred in this town.
And this is where you took him on the night in question?
Yes.
You walked along this road?
Yes.
Did Mr. Scrooge recollect the way?
He could walk it blindfolded.
Strange he had forgotten it for so many years. Next slide, please. How far did you walk?
We walked until we reached the little market town in the distance, with its bridge, its church, and its winding river.
Who are the boys?
Those are Mr. Scrooge's schoolboy friends.
Did Mr. Scrooge see these boys on the night in question?
Yes.
Was he rejoiced beyond all bounds to see them? Did his cold eyes glisten, his heart leap as they passed? Did he fill with gladness when he heard them give each other Merry Christmas?
His lip trembled, and a tear rolled down his cheek.
It was a pimple.
For the record, what are the boys' names?
Oh, I do not.
The one on the left is Tommy Foster. The one with the red scarf is Francis Riley. And the one throwing the snowballs, Margaret Thatcher.
Thank you, Mr. Scrooge. And where is Mr. Scrooge?
The school is not quite deserted.
No more questions, Your Honor.
You may step down.
I'd like to call to the stand Mrs. Fan Fitzpatrick.
Mrs. Fan Fitzpatrick?
Van?
Would you please state your full name for the court?
Fan Scrooge Fitzpatrick.
Mrs.
Please
Fitzpatrick.
call me Fan.
Thank you, Fan. What is your relationship to Mr. Scrooge?
He's my brother.
Next slide, please. Fan, do you recognize this place?
It's where Ebenezer went to school.
For how many years did Ebenezer attend this school?
12.
Next slide, please. Fan, could you please tell us who this solitary child is?
It's Ebenezer.
And why is he neglected by his family and friends at Christmas?
He was never neglected.
But do you agree that this picture shows Ebenezer to be all alone at the schoolhouse while all of the other boys have gone home for the holidays?
Yes.
And why is he all alone at Christmas?
Father wouldn't permit him to come home.
For how many years was Ebenezer not permitted to come home?
11.
And he attended the school for 12 years.
Yes.
11 out of 12 Christmases he wasn't permitted to come home? Seems to me he was neglected most of his childhood.
Never in my heart.
Why didn't your father permit Ebenezer to come home?
Well, when my mother died, Father became awful to live with, always angry and unreasonable. He sent Ebenezer away to school, and he would have sent me as well, I'm sure. But Father needed someone to do all the cooking and cleaning.
Did you ever ask your father if Ebenezer could come home?
Every Christmas, and each time he would just yell and say no.
What happened that 12th year?
Father said yes.
Why did your father finally say yes?
I've never known. That night he yelled at me, but the next morning he came into my room and spoke so gently. He kissed me on the forehead and said they had done it all in one night. He put me on a coach immediately to bring Ebenezer home.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness?
Van, my dear little sister, you had such a large heart. I have no questions.
I'd like to call to the stand Miss Belinda Worthington.
Mrs. Belinda Worthington?
Would you please state your full name for the court, please?
Belinda Campbell Worthington. My friends call me Belle.
Belle, what is your relationship to Mr. Scrooge?
I was engaged to him once.
But you never married?
I never married Mr. Scrooge, no.
Why not?
Another idol displaced me.
Another woman?
Golden idol. Money.
Did Mr. Scrooge always have a love for money?
When we were engaged, we were both poor and content to be so, but I watched as his nobler aspirations fell off one by one until his passion for me ceased to exist, and the master passion, gain, engrossed him.
And how did that make you feel?
Unloved, fraught with misery.
So how did it end between the two of you?
Knowing that I was no longer loved, I released him from our promise to marry.
What was Mr. Scrooge's reaction?
Indifference, relief,
And how did that make you feel?
broken-hearted. I loved Ebenezer once.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness?
Miss Worthington, when did that happen?
A few years after.
After you released me?
Yes.
Did I ever ask to be released?
In words? No.
In what, then?
If we had not had a contract to marry, would you have sought me out and tried to win me?
Miss Campbell.
Mrs. Worthington.
Miss Worthington, if I did not ask for release in words, in what way did I ask for it, then?
Am I to believe you would have chosen a girl without a dowry?
I believe I did choose a girl without a dowry.
Yes, you did, but you changed.
How so?
You began to weigh everything by gain.
Yes, I grew wiser, but I didn't change towards you.
When you asked for my hand, you were another man.
You made an assumption.
No,
Objection!
No, I did not.
You made an assumption.
Overruled.
That walked out on me. I was a boy.
Your own feelings tell that you are not what you are.
What am I, then?
A lonely old man intent on nothing but the pursuit of wealth.
There is nothing. This is an even-handed dealing of the world. There's nothing that professes and condemns with such severity as the poverty. And there's nothing that it professes and condemns in the pursuit of wealth.
Objection, Your Honor, can't you control
You
Don't tell
fear
me
the
how to
world
run
too
my
much.
courtroom.
Was a boy. You made an assumption.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did. You made an assumption and then you walked out on me.
Why didn't you stop me? If
don't-
I meant so much to you, why did you let me walk away?
I don't know.
All these years, and you still don't know. You let me walk away because my heart wouldn't bring you monetary gain.
That's not the reason, Belle.
You didn't love me anymore.
I did love you and I still do.
Why didn't you say that then?
I don't know. I was a fool. I was a fool. No more questions. No more.
Mr. Scrooge, in my chambers immediately. 15-minute recess.
All rise, the Honorable Stanfield R. Pearson.
Be seated. Court is now in session. I trust there will be no more interruptions, and we may continue this trial in an orderly fashion. Mr. Rothschild?
I'd like to call to the stand the ghost of Christmas present.
The ghost of Christmas present? Will the ghost of Christmas present please come forward?
I just saw him outside.
Mr. Connolly, find him. Would you like to call another witness?
I'll wait.
I'd like to.
Mr. Scrooge.
It's fine, Your Honor.
I'd like to call back to the stand Miss Fitzpatrick.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick?
Miss Fitzpatrick, in the night in question when I was in the grasps of the ghost of Christmas present,
Objection.
Sustained.
when I was with the ghost of Christmas present, where were you
In my home,
and what were you doing?
hosting a Christmas party.
Christmas party which I was invited to?
Yes.
And who's all at this Christmas party?
Friends, family, my husband's family.
What do they do for a living?
They're mostly businessmen.
Successful businessmen?
Yes, I'd say so.
I found him, but he...
Good.
But...
In a minute. Mr. Scrooge, you may continue.
Did you play any games at this party?
We played yes and no.
Did you choose the subject?
I did.
And was it a person?
Yes.
Did anyone ask if it was a person?
Yes.
And what was your response?
No.
Even though you knew that to be the incorrect answer?
Yes.
And then did you ask if it was an animal?
Yes.
And did anyone ask if it was an animal?
Yes.
And what was your response?
Yes.
Even though you also knew that to be the incorrect answer?
Yes.
Did you continue to lie to your family?
Objection.
Overruled.
Did you continue to lie to your family?
Objection.
It's a child's
Down,
game.
gentlemen.
Did you continue to lie to
This
your
has
family?
nothing to do with.
This has everything to do with it, gentlemen. For the sake of Mr. Solomon, the events that took place that night were seared into my memory. Now, is it alive?
Yes.
Miss Fitzpatrick, please state the answer you gave that night. Is it alive?
Barely.
Ah. Is it tame?
No.
Oh, it's a wild beast?
Yes.
Oh, does it roar?
Yes.
Does it growl?
Yes.
Is it a lion?
No.
Is it a tiger?
No.
Is it a bear?
No.
Oh my.
I know what it is. It's a pig. Sorry. Pigs don't roar.
Mr. Connolly.
Is it in London?
Yes.
In a zoo?
No.
Surely in a cage.
No.
Oh, does it roam the streets?
Yes.
Is it old?
Yes.
Is it ugly?
Yes.
Is it rich?
Yes.
I know who it is. It's Mr. Scrooge. What? It is, isn't it?
Is that the correct answer?
Yes.
An old, ugly, wild beast.
It was just a game.
Yeah, just to you, but you're using my name, my reputation. Now, who of these people at the party will ever want to reach out a hand of kindness or do business with me? None. As long as you keep on perpetuating the false image of me as an old, ugly, wild beast. No more questions.
Mr. Solomon, your witness.
Fred, did you play any other games that night?
Yes, we played How, When, Where, Coach to Dover, and Blind Man's Buff.
Blind Man's Buff. Is it buff or bluff?
Buff.
I always thought it was bluff.
Most people do, but it's buff.
You're sure?
Positive. You can look it up if you like.
I trust you. How do you play Blind Man's Buff again?
Somebody's blindfolded, and then they're spun around so that they're disoriented, and then they have to try and catch someone.
Is it fun?
It's a great deal of fun, yes.
Let me ask you this, Fred, and I need you to answer truthfully. When you played Blind Man's Buff, was it merely for fun, or as the name suggests, were you making fun of the blind?
My God, no, it's all in good fun.
Was it?
Of course.
You and your friends weren't sitting around laughing at the expense of the blind man?
How could you say such
Taking
a thing?
delight in the blind man stumbling about in the buff, bumping into furniture, tripping over rugs?
No, never.
Oh, look, the naked blind man can't see. How funny.
What are you saying?
How will the blind ever get ahead in this world if people like you perpetuate the image of the blind man as a clumsy, inept jester?
I wasn't.
There are heavy penalties, Fred, for that kind of behavior.
I never.
Fines?
We weren't.
Prison time?
It's just.
Maybe I should just gouge out your eyes so you know what it feels like!
Whoa! This is absolutely preposterous! No one was perpetuating or ridiculing anyone that night. They were playing a child's game. Just a mere child's game. I was there that night.
Precisely. And she wasn't ridiculing Mr. Scrooge or perpetuating a false image of him when they played yes and no. That, too, was all in good fun. No more questions, Your Honor.
You may step down. Mr. Solomon?
I'd like to call to the stand the ghost of Christmas Present.
The ghost of Christmas present?
Not living up to his name, I see.
Mr. Connolly, where is he?
I tried to tell you he doesn't have time for this trial.
Doesn't have time?
He said his life upon this globe is very brief, and he has other business to attend to.
Tell him his business is within these four walls and nowhere else.
I tried, but he refuses to come in.
What is he doing that is so important?
He's sprinkling powder into people's food.
He what?
There's something peculiar in that powder.
Mr. Connolly, go outside and find him.
I don't want to mess with him. I've never seen the likes of him before.
Mr. Connolly.
And he says he has 1,800 brothers.
Mr. Connolly.
And I don't like the odds.
Mr. Connolly.
He's
He's
also
sprinkling an unknown substance into people's food.
He's also harboring 2 children under his robe.
What?
He has 2 children. They live under his robe.
Mr. Connolly, notify Scotland Yard.
They're dirty, filthy, and they haven't bathed in God knows how long.
They're his children.
No, he says that they're mankind.
Well, he takes care of them.
Forcing them to live under his robes is hardly taking care of them. Mr. Connolly, now.
Be wary of them both, especially the boy. He's the one with doom written upon his brow.
Your Honor, he really is good to them.
That will be for the courts to decide. Mr. Rothschild.
I'd like to call back to the stand Mr. Robert Cratchit.
Mr. Robert Cratchit.
Bob, when you began working at Scrooge and Marley's 10 years ago, what was your salary? Were you able to live on that?
We made do.
By we, who do you mean?
My family.
At that time, how big was your family?
It was my wife, myself, and 2 children.
A family of 4 on 15 shillings?
Yes, sir.
On the night in question, how big was your family?
It was my wife, myself, and 6 children.
Wow, you've been busy. And how much were you making by then at Scrooge and Marley's?
15 shillings a week.
You worked at Scrooge and Marley's for 10 years and never once received a raise?
That's correct.
Did you ever receive a Christmas bonus?
No.
After Mr. Marley's death, did Mr. Scrooge ever come to you about becoming a partner?
I asked him about that once, but he said it would cost too much money to change the sign.
The sign.
Scrooge and Marley.
Oh, that's right. He never painted out old Marley's name, did he?
No, it still says Scrooge and Marley.
Doesn't that confuse people?
Sometimes people new to the business call him Mr. Scrooge, and sometimes Mr. Marley, but he answers to both.
So you were supporting a wife and 6 children on 15 shillings with no hope for a raise or becoming a partner?
Yes, sir.
How were you able to do that?
It wasn't easy.
I'd say it's nearly impossible.
Objection!
Overruled.
But he...
Mr. Scrooge.
Bob, I want to talk to you about your youngest child.
Tim.
Yes, but you have a nickname for him, don't you?
Tiny Tim.
I'm assuming because he's tiny.
He's as sharp as a tennis ball.
Mr. Scrooge.
Yes, he's small for his age.
Any particular reason why?
He was born prematurely and remained ill.
On the night in question, how ill was Tiny Tim?
Quite ill.
Was he dying?
Yes, sir.
Did he know it?
I think so.
Did it scare him?
He never talked about it, but he did say to me once that he hopes people saw him in church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to see who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
Tim was a cripple?
He had grown so weak he was forced to use a crutch.
Did you seek medical help?
We couldn't afford it.
So you decided to
Wait and pray.
wait and pray. Your Honor, I'd like to submit as evidence Exhibit B, Tiny Tim's crutch. Your Honor, if Tiny Tim's life continued on the path that it was on, this is all that would have remained of him. The only thing sadder than a little boy forced to use a crutch is a crutch without an owner. It isn't pretty, but this is what a world without pity can do. Bob, your first day back after the night in question, did you notice a change in Mr. Scrooge?
Yes, he was a completely new person. Happy, kind.
How did that kindness manifest itself?
We burned more coal that day than we had all year. He gave me a substantial raise and offered to help Tiny Tim.
What helped him how?
Pay for all his medical treatment. Give him the best care. For a time, he was a second father to Tim.
And how is Tim today?
As good as gold and better. He did not die and no longer needs his crutch to walk.
Would you say that the change in Mr. Scrooge saved Tim's life?
Yes, I would.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness?
Mr. Cratchit, before the night in question, have you ever been thrown in debtor's prison?
No, sir.
Have you ever been thrown in jail for not being able to pay your bills?
No, sir.
Have you ever been forced to sleep in the street?
No, sir.
Have you ever not been able to provide food for your family?
No, sir, but
What did you do during the day, Mr. Cratchit?
during the day I work for you.
And at night?
I spent my night at home with my family.
According to Miss Wainwright, who has extensive knowledge of the poor, she says that thousands are in need for common necessaries, and hundreds of thousands are the need for common comforts. Before the night in question, do you believe that you fit this margin?
No, sir.
I didn't either. I mean, you had a house, you had a job, you had a wage, you were able to supply food for your family.
Yes, sir, but I have 6 children. It's actually enough.
Well, maybe you should have thought of that before you had them. No more questions.
You may step down. Mr. Solomon?
I'd like to call to the stand the ghost of Christmas Present.
The ghost of Christmas present?
He got away.
He got away? How?
I don't know. 1 minute he was telling people to touch his robe, and the next he was gone.
Mr. Connolly, ghosts don't just vanish into thin air. Well, it's Scotland Yard's problem now. Mr. Connolly, find him.
I'd like to.
Mr. Scrooge,
Your Honor, it's fine.
very well.
I'd like to call to the court Miss Harriet Dilber.
Mrs. Harriet Dilber.
Delightful. Will you please state your full name to the court?
Harriet Penelope Dilba.
And where were you on the night in question?
About
Specifically,
Gesundheit.
Miss Dilber, did you enter my bedroom that night?
Well, don't flatter yourself.
Miss Dilber, did you enter my bedroom that night on the intent of pilfering my goods?
What kind of a lady do you think I am?
The pilfering kind.
Well, I'll have you know I haven't pilfered anything in years.
Old Joe thinks differently.
Well, old Joe's got a big mouth.
So you admit.
Well, maybe just a quickie pilfer.
What exactly did you pilfer that night?
Well, that's getting a bit personal now, ain't it? I mean, it's not very ladylike to talk about pilfering in public, don't you think?
Mrs. Dilber, are you aware of what the word pilfer means?
Well, if you don't know what it means by now, I ain't gonna tell ya. What's it mean again?
To steal.
on. Really? You mean it's not? In all these years, I thought it meant something else.
So let me ask you again, Miss Dilbert. Did you enter my bedroom that night on the intent of pilfering my goods?
Yeah, I went into your place and pilfered everything I could get me hands on.
And what exactly did you steal?
Well, I can't quite remember. Me memory ain't what it used to be.
In old Joe's deposition here, he says, she came into my shop singing old scratches, finally kicked the bucket. She undid her bundle, and out fell his gloves, leather boots, blankets, bed curtains, rings and all. And his shirt, fine cotton it was.
They were gonna ruin a perfectly good shirt.
Ruin?
They were gonna bury you in it.
Are you trying to say that you took that shirt off my dead body?
Of course. It was a fine cotton shirt. I couldn't see it go to waste. I took it off your body and I dressed you in calico. That's enough for your cold bones.
No more questions.
Mr. Solomon, your witness.
Mrs. Dilbert, may I call you?
You can call me anything you like, love.
Thank you. Harriet?
How about calling me yours?
Harriet.
Such a gentleman.
Harriet, where do you live?
Well, you're a fast one, you are.
Where do you sleep each night?
Well, wouldn't you like to know?
Yes, I would.
You're pilfering me out, ain't you?
Harriet, do you know Sarah Wainwright?
Maybe.
How long have you known her?
Few years.
And how did you two meet?
At a party.
Was it snowing that night? That was you standing out in the cold, wasn't it? How's your family?
Cold took 'em.
When?
A few days after the party.
Where do you live now?
Wherever.
How often do you see Sarah Wainwright?
Every Christmas. And I look forward to it every year. She's like family. Only family I got.
Harriet, why did you steal Mr. Scrooge's belongings?
Well, you know a better way.
Yes, it's called getting a job.
Well, and are you gonna hire me?
No more questions, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Wait, that's my bag!
So who wants to call a witness now?
I'd like to call to the stand the ghost of Christmas yet to come.
The ghost of Christmas yet to come?
Since the ghost of Christmas yet to come does not possess a normal voice box, we've engaged a court-appointed translator who speaks ghost. Thank you. Would you please state your full name for the court, please?
The ghost of Christmas yet to come.
A ghost of Christmas yet to come. May I call you Future?
Please.
Future, did you visit Mr. Scrooge on the night in question?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of your visit?
Redemption.
He tried to kill me!
Mr. Scrooge, sit down!
Go ahead, ask him, ask him!
Mr. Scrooge!
Did you try to kill Mr. Scrooge?
No.
Liar!
Could he not shout like that? It hurts my ears.
Murderer!
Why is he doing this to me?
Because you tried to kill me!
I've never killed anyone in my life.
He's lying!
I'd like to kill him right now, though.
He's not the only one.
Mr. Scrooge
Sit
says you
down,
tried to
Mr.
kill him.
Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge says you tried to kill him.
Mr. Scrooge can kiss my spectral cookies.
Why would Mr. Scrooge say a thing like that?
Because he's a putz.
Objection!
Overruled!
But he can't.
The witness is entitled to his own opinion.
Oh, that wasn't his opinion. It was mine. I'm sorry.
Future, while you were with Mr. Scrooge that night, was he ever in danger of dying?
The only one in danger of dying that night was me. I nearly froze my hunkers off that night. Look at this. I've seen toilet paper thicker than this. This wouldn't keep a pig on a spit warm. You'd think they'd spring for something with a bit of insulation, but no. Christmas present has enough fat on him to keep a tribe of Eskimos warm for a lifetime, and they give him a wool suit.
As best you can remember, what happened on the night in question?
I'm freezing now, as a matter of fact. Could someone put some more wood on, please?
Mr. Connolly, it is warm enough in here.
What?
Please continue, Mr. Rothschild.
Did you kidnap Mr. Scrooge?
No.
Then what prevented him from escaping?
Nothing.
So nothing was stopping Mr. Scrooge from escaping?
Nope, he went on his own.
He did?
Yes.
And where did you take him?
To see his future.
Mr. Scrooge's future if he didn't change his ways, is that correct?
Yes.
And what was how was his future?
Cold, overcast, gloomy. Hello, welcome to England. The sun never sets my eye. The sun never rises. I hate England. It's cold and it's damp.
Besides the weather, what was his future like?
It was pretty bad.
How bad?
Well, he was dead to begin with.
Dead.
Yep.
Did your visit have any effect on Mr. Scrooge?
He cried like a baby and promised to keep Christmas in his heart all the year.
He did.
Blubbered and bawled his head off.
He promised to keep Christmas in his heart all the year?
A promise he made on his knees.
I see. No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness.
Earlier, Mr. Marley expressed his frustration with scheduling an appointment. A 7-year wait. It's quite a workload. When do you get a day off?
We're off from Christmas Day until Christmas Eve.
You work 1 day out of the year?
One night, actually, but it's a busy night. No rest.
Only work 1 day out of the year. Have you ever considered taking more hours?
We're the ghosts of Christmas. We only come once a year.
On the night in question, you took me to my bedroom, did you not?
Yes.
And why did you take me there?
Is it hot in here?
Answer the question.
Could someone open a window? I'm burning up.
Answer the question.
I'm thirsty too. I'm hot and thirsty. Great, I've got cholera.
You don't want to admit that you tried to kill me that night.
Again with the killing. What is it with you?
On that night, you showed me Exhibit C, my dead body.
Uh-oh.
Did you or did you not show me this on the night in question?
I did, but it wasn't...
Did you continually point at it to make me pull back the sheet?
Yes, but it wasn't...
Making me experience my own dead body, therefore inducing me to have a heart attack and kill over?
No.
Liar!
Objection!
Our client is not lying.
Then why show me this? Why show me this if I was past all hope? And I'll tell you why, gentlemen. Because the ghost of Christmas past, future, is a cold-hearted murderer!
No!
Yes!
I didn't...
Liar!
It wasn't me.
There was no one in the room that night.
Look there.
Oh, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to finish what you couldn't finish a year ago today. But I won't do it. I won't do it.
Mr. Scrooge, pull back the sheet.
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying pull back the sheet.
Yeah,
Pull it back!
heaven's power.
You may not, but I do. Mr. Connolly! No!
No! Merciful heaven, Jacob,
Mr. Marley, what is the meaning of this?
where's my dead body?
Mr. Marley!
Does anybody have any smelling salts?
Never mind that. Mr. Marley, where is Mr. Scrooge's dead body?
It was under the sheet.
Did you see it under the sheet?
No, I just thought.
Mr. Connolly, what do I pay you for?
Well, I sweep the floor.
Mr. Marley!
Oh, wait. That was a rhetorical question, wasn't it?
Mr. Marley, where is Mr. Scrooge's dead body? Mr. Connolly, arrest him!
What?
Now!
Your Honor, my client.
Your client has stolen evidence.
I'm sure there's a logical explanation.
I'd like to hear it.
Of course, Your Honor. Jacob, where's Mr. Scrooge's dead body? Future? Oh, you're useless. Christmas past? Past. Good. You haven't seen Mr. Scrooge's dead body lying around anywhere, have you? Your Honor, I'd like to request a brief recess.
Not until your clients tell us what they did with Mr. Scrooge's dead body.
My clients may have had nothing to do with the disappearance.
Mr. Marley was laying under the sheet where Mr. Scrooge's dead body should have been.
He has testified to getting no sleep and no rest. Perhaps he just needed a quick cat nap.
If your clients don't tell us what happened with Mr. Scrooge's dead body this instant, I will have you all thrown in jail. Now, for the last time, where is Mr. Scrooge's dead body?
Well, there was never a dead body.
What?
There is no dead body.
That wasn't my dead body under the sheet that night?
Nope.
Then who or what was under there that night? Jacob.
Phony double iron!
Order!
Treasonous!
Order!
War!
What is the meaning of this?
Spineless! Lily-livered! Belly-aching!
Order!
I didn't force it! I set our best chance!
Order!
Force you to do what?
Force us to break the rules.
Rules? What rules?
When we show someone their future, we're not allowed to use a dead body.
You're not allowed to use a dead body.
No, tombstones, yes, but dead bodies, no. But Mr. Marley didn't think that a tombstone would be enough to scare Mr. Scrooge into changing his ways, so he forced us to use a dead body.
I didn't force!
Force!
Forced.
Be quiet.
So, that was you? Under my bedsheet that night? Did you fabricate anything else that night?
Technically, your entire future.
What?
It was an approximation.
You approximated my entire future?
We approximate everyone's future.
What?
We're ghosts, we speculate. That's where the word specter comes from.
On the night in question, you intentionally deceived me to changing my ways by using a counterfeit corpse and a fabricated future?
It was for your own good!
Mr. Marley, you and your hooligan friends are nothing but self-righteous, double-dealing, double-talking charlatans who do nothing but terrorize people in the name of redemption!
Mr. Scrooge, sit down!
Your Honor!
You too, gentlemen!
But, Your Honor!
Not another word!
Not
another word! Now sit down! All of you! You!
Sorry.
In all my years, I have never witnessed a more reprehensible assemblage! You have collectively made a mockery of my courtroom with your impertinent and abhorrent behavior. If I could work my will, I would have every single one of you boiled in your own pudding and buried with a stick of holly through your hearts.
Surely you don't mean that.
And you'd be the first! There will be no closing arguments. I have heard more than enough to pass judgment. Although Mr. Scrooge failed to present overwhelming evidence that anyone, living or deceased, attempted to kidnap or murder him, he did provide, in a rather uncustomary way, evidence of trespassing, breaking and entering, stalking, theft, pain and suffering, and the intentional infliction of emotional distress. Furthermore, I found overwhelming evidence, including his own account, that Mr. Marley carefully plotted, contrived, and conspired the events of the night in question, and without his conspirance, the events would not have occurred. Therefore, I find Mr. Marley and the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future guilty on all accounts, and sentence them to a fine of 1,000 pounds apiece, and termination of all ghostly duties.
I've won?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as happy as an angel. I am as giddy as a goose.
Take your giddiness elsewhere. This court
Your Honor, termination?
effective immediately.
You can't terminate my clients from their spiritual obligation.
I just did, didn't I?
But they'll cease to exist. It's a death sentence.
It won't be much of a change for them, will it?
Your Honor, please just reconsider. Community time. They'll pay twice the fine, triple, anything but termination.
That's enough. This court is...
But, Your Honor, Mr. Scrooge made a promise,
Yes.
a verbal agreement.
Yes, a promise that I made on my knees to keep the spirit of Christmas inside my heart all the year.
And you've broken that verbal agreement.
The contrary, the spirits of the Christmas have thrived within my heart.
I beg to differ.
On the contrary, thanks to me, Mr. Cratch is the highest paid clerk in all of London. Thanks to me, young tiny Tim will be old enormous Tim. I've patted children on the head, I've given to the poor, and I've been irresistibly pleasant.
The lessons of the spirits of Christmas worked.
But why should I keep the lessons that they had taught me if they don't keep it themselves?
They don't fail to keep it.
By their own admission, they only show up once a year.
Yes, because Christmas comes only once a year.
That's a poor excuse to pick a man's pocket every 25th of December.
If you think charity, mercy, and benevolence is...
You forget, gentlemen, you've lost this trial.
Mr. Scrooge, I beg you, a world without the spirits of Christmas is...
January through November. What's one more month?
Your Honor,
Your Honor,
please.
please.
It's not my business. This court is...
Wait!
What?
Why?
I'll tell you what, gentlemen. I'll drop all charges if your clients agree to work more than 1 day a year.
Are you serious?
Quite serious.
Thank you, thank you. My clients will be more than willing to double their workload.
No, 2 days. So, no, that would not do.
How many days will do?
Let's say, shall we say, every day?
Every day?
Yes.
Mr. Scrooge, please be reasonable.
Oh, I am being reasonable.
But you're demanding of my clients.
I'm demanding of your clients exactly what they demanded of me.
But, Mr. Scrooge...
Now, gentlemen, or your clients cease to exist.
We'll need several days to discuss this with our clients.
Well, they're all right here, aren't they?
Oh, Christmas present isn't present.
Now, or I rescind my offer.
It's too late. I've made my decision. This court...
Wait!
Mr. Scrooge, it's a bargain.
You accept my terms?
We do.
The spirits will thrive every day.
They will.
Effective immediately?
Effective immediately. And all charges are dropped?
All charges dropped, except I get to keep all the money they owe me.
You said all charges.
All charges, but not the money.
Mr. Scrooge, this is not...
So I may start a fund for the poor.
What?
I believe that Miss Wainwright will make a wonderful executive, and Miss Dilber will make a fantastic overpaid clerk.
Are you well, Mr. Scrooge?
Oh, quite well. You see, gentlemen, your clients aren't the only ones who had to go through extraordinary measures.
What?
Extraordinary measures. I had all of you believe that I was the man I was before. But, I mean, not the man I was before, but the man I was before. But don't worry, I'm not the man I was before. before. I had to make you believe that I was the man I was before. Nothing wonderful would have come to this trial, but I'm not the man. Merry Christmas, the merriest Christmas in all the land.
You mean this whole trial?
Extraordinary measures.
Mr. Scrooge, I don't know what to say.
Don't say anything at all, then.
You really are good a man and as good a friend as a good old world could ever ask for.
A promise is a promise, right, Jacob? Now, gentlemen, let it said to be for ourselves that we know how to keep the Christmas, the caring and generosity within our hearts many and many of a year.
God bless us, everyone.
A remarkable boy, a truly magnificent boy. And now I'd like to invite all of you to my house for a wonderful party with wonderful games and wonderful happiness.
You truly are a good man of business, Ebenezer.
Well, mankind is my...
Sorry.
Sometimes I just need a swift kick in the pants. Don't you agree, Your Honor?
All retire to Bedlam. I suppose you'll want the entire day tomorrow.
If convenient.
It's not convenient. We have business to attend to. The day after the next, we begin Twist versus Bumble, but I suppose you'll want the entire day. Be here all the earlier the next.
Thank you, sir, and Merry Christmas.
Ah! Who's there? We're closed. Who's there?